Before I can explain what port forwarding is, there are some assumptions that I need to make. Basically, these assumptions are made because we need to have certain criteria for this port forwarding to actually work in the way we would like it to work in our example. We need to assume that every device on the internet has an IP address. We need to assume that an IP address will be broken up into many ports, and we need to make sure that a port is only being used by one program at a time. Okay, now that we have those concepts out of the way and understood, there is something that we need to talk about, which is NAT, N-A-T. And NAT is an acronym for Network Address Translation. And what NAT does, it will take an IP address and kind of basically break it into many IP addresses. Now, what does that mean? Does that actually mean that we're magically creating IP addresses? Well, yes and no. What it does is it takes an external IP address that we have, because everybody who connects to the internet has an IP address that is seen by the world, and it also creates an internal IP address, and then every computer connected inside that network will have their own IP address. What happens there is that from the world you would only see the external IP address, which is only one, and inside you will see only internal IP addresses. Now, how does this work? For example, if we have a computer inside our network and that computer wants to send a message to somebody inside the network, they will only use their internal IP addresses, and the computer who's receiving it will receive it from the IP address of the internal computer who sent it. Now, if for example a computer was going to send a message to a computer outside of the network, it cannot be done from the internal IP address. It will be done through the actual gateway, and what the gateway will do is it will take the message, and the computer from the inside will send it to the internal IP address of the gateway. It will be transferred and sent from the external IP address to the other computer. Now, what happens on the other side? Let's pretend now that we are receiving a message to an internal computer. The message comes, and the message has to be sent to our external IP address. At that point, our gateway needs to know what to do with the data that it's incoming. And what happens is that when a message is sent, it needs to tell the computer what port to forward it to. And what it will do, it will know which computer is relevant to this specific case in terms of the message coming in. So what happens is that the gateway will know what computer to send that message to. Now, it's very important to know that a rule setup for a port only applies to that specific port, which means, for example, if we do something to port 20, it will only apply for port 20. If we say that, for example, if a message comes through port 20, just let it through. What do I mean by let it through? Basically, some programs require direct access to a certain port, and because of firewalls, which is very important to have in your own network, sometimes certain messages do not reach or are not as fast. For example, there is a program that I will use in this example called Azurius, and what that program does, you can of course download BitTorrent files, which are illegal, so don't do it. Sometimes you need access from the internet to your computer for you to be able to receive that file faster, and by doing port forwarding, you will be able to give access from the internet to your computer. What happens is that by doing so, you kind of expose your computer to the internet in that port to that program. So it's very important to know that once a port is forwarded, that port might put risk to your computer. So it's very important to know when doing a port forwarding to not make a mistake and allow people to get into your computer and cause problems. Now I will give you an example of what I mean by port forwarding and not having it.